Hi everybody, this is a look at the Nikon F3 35mm film camera, which was introduced in 1980 and production ran up until the year 2000, which is 20 years, and that's after the production end of the F4, which ended in 96, and that just shows you how popular this camera was. This is the HP model, or I point model, and the difference is in the finder. The first finder was a DE2 finder, which was slightly lower than this one. This finder came out in 82. This is the DE3, and it was designed for people with spectacles because you don't actually need to put your eye right up to the finder to see the whole image. So it was obviously very useful, but it became that popular. It was usually the standard model they sold from then on. I'll show you the box because I don't usually have a box when I buy my cameras. This is the box it came in, and inside you have the packaging, a silica gel, a little bag for the camera, and a plastic bottom for the base. And you also had a Nikon system leaflet that shows the cameras and accessories available at that time, along with the warranty card, use of filters, and the instruction manual, which goes through the specifications and all the functions and controls, etc. So I'll show you a rundown of the controls and features of this camera, and I'm also going to show you how it works with a flash unit, and I'll show you how to load a film. So first of all, going over the controls and features, I'll start on the top plate. And on the left hand side you have the traditional rewind crank and lever for rewinding the film. Around that is the accessory shoe, which was mainly used for accessory flashes, which was similar to the earlier Pro models. Here is a exposure compensation dial, which you press in this button and you turn the base, and you can set it to plus or minus 2 stops for exposure compensation. Also around the rewind crank is the ISO or ASA speed film setting, and that ranges from 12 up to 6400, and I usually use ASA 200 speed film. Now, it doesn't have a DX setting, that wasn't to come till later cameras. So on the top, obviously next to that you've got the finder with the eyepiece on, and you do have a covering to stop light going in if you're using it on a tripod. The finder release is 2 buttons either side, 2 levers, and you pull those in together and the finder pops off. You've got the focusing screen, which on this model you can flick out with your thumb or forefinger. Replace the focusing screen for different ones, quite a few different available. You've got an indicator where the film plane is, and then now you've got the shutter dial, which is the first Pro body to have a aperture priority setting, and it's the F3 was a Nikon's first Pro electronic camera as well, where the shutter release and the curtain and the metering is all electronic, so it not fire the shutter electronically, obviously without any batteries. The shutter dial, you've got settings in manual mode from 8 seconds up to 1/2000th of a second, and electronically it controls that from 8 to 2/2000ths of a second steplessly. It locks on the aperture priority mode, but you can press on this little button here, and you can set it to X, which is flash sync setting, or 1/6 of a second, and it locks on that setting as well. You've also got T for a timed exposure. So if you fire the shutter will remain open till you move the dial to another setting. On B, which is for bulb, you cock the shutter, fire the shutter, and the shutter remains open until you release it. And then you've got your other normal settings, like say from 8 up to 1/2000th of a second. Around this shutter dial as well, you have the self timer switch. You flick that until it shows the red dot, and then when you fire the shutter, the LED light blinks on the front and it gets faster near the end. It's 10-second count, and it times the shutter and fires it automatically. Flip back off. Here is the film advance lever, and for the first time in a Pro body, the shutter release button is actually in the centre of that, and like I say, it's electronically controlled and timed, quartz timing. The advance lever itself is a very nice, soft, short stroke, very positive, very short and nicely soft. It's the way it was geared differently inside. Here is the power on button, which obviously switches on the power for the shutter release and the curtain and the exposure meter. Now you can leave it on in that setting all the time, because the way it works is no power is actually running through the camera until you halfly press the shutter button, and even if you let go, the power only then stays on for 16 seconds and switches off automatically. So you can leave it with that switch on all the time. You shouldn't drain the batteries. Here you have the film advance frame counter, and above that is a multiple exposure lever, which is a nice little feature on this camera. At any time, if you decide you need to take a multiple exposure, all you need to do is flick that lever up, and then when you cock the shutter, it doesn't advance the film, so you can immediately take another shot on the same frame, and it resets itself. You've got the camera lugs fit in a strap. On the back, not much on the back at all. You basically got a little piece here for putting a part of the film carton, just to remind you what film speed you've got, and obviously how many exposure it's got on it. Moving to the front, got the F3 name, the self-timer countdown light, which I've mentioned before. You've got a depth of field preview button, which you press and it operates the lever, so you can judge the depth of field when using apertures. You've got a mirror lockup lever, which is nice and easy to use on this camera. It's very soft, nice function, and you just flick that up. You need to press in that button first and flick that up, and it locks up the mirror, and you can bring it down at any time. And if you look at the mirror, you can see there is a pattern on the mirror. It looks like a keyhole, if you can see that, and that is a lot of tiny owls which let through around 10% of the light through that mirror. And if I put this one up, you should be able to see underneath there's actually another mirror. So the 10% of light hits that mirror and is reflected down into the base, and you're not be able to see that, but there's an SPD light sensing cell in the bottom of the mount. So that's the way it measures the light. Here you have a exposure lock button, and basically you can decide what you need exposing correctly, aim the camera at it, half go down the shutter, holding that button with the finger, and then you can recompose and take the shot, and it will keep those settings for you. Now around that is a manual shutter release lever, because as I say, this camera fires the shutter electronically, so without the batteries it would be pretty useless without this feature. And the way you use that is put it to a standoff position, and then you can fire the shutter by this lever, and it fires it at 1/60th of a second, so obviously you would need a light meter to get the exposure correctly. You've got the Nikon F mount, which on this model incorporates the AI functions, of course, because it was introduced when AI lenses were available, and that is a meter coupling lug on the mount there for the AI. Now on this model, as well as the F4, you can actually retract that lug by pressing in that pin. You can push the lug back, so you can actually mount pre-AI lenses which have the flat mount, and you can use stop-down metering with those lenses. Put that back. You've got the mounting pin for releasing the lens when it's mounted. Here you have a flash sync socket for flashes, external flashes. Underneath you have where you fit the batteries, 2 button cells. These are for the motor drive mount. You've got a standard tripod mount, and you've got a film rewind button which you need to press in before you rewind in the film. Now lens, simply line up the black dot on the lens with the white dot on the body. And this is a 50mm 1.4 lens, which obviously works perfectly with this camera. It's not autofocus, of course, it doesn't use autofocus on this camera, although a model was introduced in '83, which wasn't very popular. Okay, I'll put the finder back on, and I'll show you how to load a film. So the finder just pops on. Now to open the back on this model, the early models had a key on the bottom, whereas this model, you move this lever on the top, and then you can pull up the rewind crank itself and pull that up, and the back springs open. You've got a couple of mounts there for the data backs for this camera. So to fit a film, you drop in the cartridge, push down the rewind lever, and then you pull the film across, and you need to drop the end of the film lug into the hole in the sprocket. Push that in. You don't need to push it all the way through, just push it in, and then advance the film, and it should take up the film, and you can see the sprockets have engaged into the holes in the film. So you wind that on, fire the shutter, and then you can close the back. Take up any slack by pulling out the rewind lever and just rewind any slack back in. Put that back down, and then you need to advance the film. Now when you're advancing the film, people find this strange that at this stage, until the frame count actually reaches 1, the shutter is set electronically to 1/80th of a second, and that is what you would see in the display. But you wind on the film a couple of times, firing the shutter, checking that the rewind crank turns, so you know the film's correctly inserted. So now you're on 0, and when you next wind on, and you're on frame 1, when you look through the viewfinder, half press the shutter, you will see in the top left corner the shutter speed, which will show you the manually set one or the one you've got set in the auto aperture priority exposure mode. What the camera sets, the shutter speed will be in the top left corner. You see the aperture of the lens, which is read from the ADR scale off the lens, which is the small numbers on the back. It reads that through a gap in the finder. If you're in manual mode, again it shows you the shutter speed on the left, but it also shows you a plus and minus symbol. And for correct exposure, you would set it till it shows the plus and the minus symbol together. Now that readout is a liquid crystal display. On the back you've also got the Nikon name and the serial number. So that's the basic functions of the camera. I will show you how to rewind the film. I'll just take a few shots. In fact, first I can show you it working with the flash. They did provide a accessory shoe for the flash to let you use standard flash units with this camera. And this is a AS4, and that simply slips on to the base and lets you use a standard accessory shoe flash, but you won't get through the lens metering with that. I've got a flash which was designed for use with this camera. This is a SB16. Now they made two versions of this. There's a version that connects to this camera via its hot shoe. So it's got a Nikon F3 shoe on the base. And they made another model which connects to a standard hot shoe. But you need to use this to get the through the lens feature flash with this camera. Now the module on the bottom can be replaced with the other module. You just turn this lever, pressing the button, and that can be replaced. At the time this flash unit was the top end flash unit that Nikon produced, and it wasn't until quite a few years later, I think it was about 1988, when they introduced the SB24, that it was actually made in superior as such. It's got a zoom head on it, which you have to do manually. You've got the different settings for 28mm, 35mm, 50mm or 85mm lenses. So we've got a 50mm attached to this. You can get a diffuser that fits on the top as well for wider angle lenses. The flash head itself does tilt to straight forward to 90 degrees up. You've also got a little extra light on the front for when using bounce flash. It flashes that as well. You can rotate the head as well, pushing this lever, and the head can be rotated through 90 degrees. On the back you've got the settings. If you leave it to through the lens setting, it can read the ASA speed of the film. I think it's through one of these contacts. So basically then you can set the aperture you wish, and it will work automatically for you. But obviously you do have manual settings as well, and with those you would need to set the ASA speed on here and check which aperture you need to set for the range of what you need. So to mount this flash, you put it on the shoe from front to back. Trying to get it correctly, it's a bit fiddly when I'm trying to. Right. There we go. I made it a bit tighter myself. I do actually put tape around the base of these because with it being metal it can scratch the accessory shoe. It just makes it a bit stiffer for me. Tighten that up. I see it makes it quite a a big unit with that flash on. Switch the flash on. And it's fired up, and the flash is ready. You don't get a ready light in the viewfinder. He says. You do get a ready light in the viewfinder. You get a red light in the top right hand corner, and you also get one on the flash itself. So to fire the flash, you can set it to X, the flash sync, or 1/6 of a second, set the aperture you desire, cock the shutter, and the flash will fire. Very good flash unit actually, so very powerful. Turn that off. I'll show you how to rewind the film. When you get to the end of the film, or you want to rewind at any time, you need to press in this button, and then you can lift up the rewind lever, rewind the film back into the cartridge. Now the frame counter doesn't count down as you're doing this, and what I try and do is stop the film before it fully rewinds back in, and I'll show you why in a short while. So you rewind the film, you can feel when the tension goes off, that it's off the sprocket. So then you can open the back, and say I like to leave it so the leader's still sticking out. Now the reason for that is, if you try and rewind it all the way back in, you can sometimes get this end of the film scraping along the shutter blades itself, which can cause marks or even damage the shutter. So you can take the film out, pull up the rewind lever all the way, and you can take the film cartridge out, close the back. Another thing I can show you for this camera is a case. This is a CF22 case, which was designed for this camera with a short standard lens. Just put the back on, and this simply fits. Drop the camera in, and you use these little clips on the side around the strap. Just clip it on, which stops the case coming off. Doesn't screw in to the tripod mount like a lot of earlier cases did. It's a very nice looking case, and suits this strap very well, of course. And then to close it, you just pull it over and click down the studs. So there you go, that's the Nikon F3. Hope you've enjoyed watching this overview, review, all the controls. I think I've shown you everything on that camera, so I'll not be doing another video. But look out for new videos from me about other Nikon equipment, and I hope to see you soon. Thanks for watching.